Tonight, Iowa showdown. Frontrunners Romney and Gingrich under fire at last night's Republican presidential debate. Dean Reynolds has the highlights. Reports of conflicting accounts from the same witness in the Jerry Sandusky sex abuse case. Anna Werner reports the latest. Rare photos of women on China's death row. Celia Hatton shows us how they shed new light on Beijing's approach to execution.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. Russ Mitchell is off tonight. I'm betting Wing. The 12th Republican presidential debate last night was also the next to last debate before the first votes are cast in the Iowa caucus, which is 23 days out. Dean Reynolds in Des Moines has more on the high-stakes free-for-all.
As the latest king of the Republican Hill, Newt Gingrich came under attack, but Mitt Romney took a lot of punches, including some of the self-inflicted variety. For example, when he challenged the truth of an attack by Rick Perry, Romney offered to put money on the table.
Rick, I'll tell you what, 10,000 bucks? $10,000 bet?
I'm not in the betting business,
but
okay.
Critics scoffed that it was a sign of Romney's wealth and elitism, noting that few Iowans could pony up $10,000 to prove a point.
Those type of elitist tactics may work on croquet courts, but they don't work in presidential debates.
Then there was Romney's repeated assertion that he's an outsider, a businessman, not tied to the culture of Washington. Gingrich, a creature of Washington for decades, reminded Romney of his failed Senate race.
Let's be candid. The only reason you didn't become a career politician is you lost to Teddy Kennedy in 1994.
Well, now wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second.
You'll get another.
While Romney was reduced to nervous laughter, Gingrich provoked belly laughs at himself when he insisted his work as a well-paid Washington consultant is not really lobbying.
I offered strategic advice. I was in the private sector, and I was doing things in the private sector.
The Romney camp sees Gingrich as unstable and unfaithful, but the former speaker tried to defuse the charges by admitting to failings.
I've said up front openly, I've made mistakes at times. I've had to go to God for forgiveness. I've had to seek reconciliation.
Far behind in the polls, Michelle Bachmann launched a new attack, contemptuously cloning Gingrich and Romney.
If you look at Newt Romney, and if you look at Newt Romney.
She elaborated on Face the Nation.
It is very clear that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two of them.
Meanwhile, the candidates returned to the trail, well aware that the time for traditional retail politicking is now or never. But the debates are not done. Another is coming up on Thursday in Sioux City, Iowa, and the pressure there will be intense. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Des Moines.
A preliminary hearing is scheduled Tuesday in the sex abuse case against former Penn State assistant coach Jerry Sandusky. 5 of his accusers are expected to testify, and as Anna Werner reports, at least one other witness.
Former Penn State assistant coach Mike McQueary is among those expected to testify Tuesday. McQueary told a grand jury that in 2002, he saw Jerry Sandusky in a locker room shower on the Penn State campus, sexually assaulting a young boy.
Mr. Sandusky, any comments?
According to the grand jury report, he saw a boy he estimated to be 10 years old, with his hands up against the wall, being raped by a naked Sandusky. But today, a local newspaper report raised new questions about whether McQueary may have told a different story back then. The Harrisburg Patriot News, quoting a source, says that after the incident, McQueary went to his father's home, where a family friend, Dr. Jonathan Dranov, was also present. The newspaper says Dranov reportedly said at the time McQueary heard sex sounds, saw a young boy stick his head around the corner, and an adult arm reach around and pull the boy back. The paper said Dranov told grand jurors he asked McQueary several times if he saw anything sexual, and several times McQueary said no. At Dranov's home today, a woman declined to comment.
We're not opening the door. Goodbye.
Dranov's account could be important for former Penn State administrators Tim Curley and Gary Schultz, who are charged with lying to the grand jury. They claimed that when McQueary told them about the incident, he did not report seeing actual sexual activity. Lawyers for the two men said the new information would be powerful exculpatory evidence, and the charges against our clients should be dismissed. McQueary today declined comment. But earlier this week, Sandusky's lawyer, Joe Amendola, said this about McQueary.
It would be a shame if what comes out of all this is that all he reported was he felt uncomfortable because Jerry was in the shower with a kid, horse playing around. And all of a sudden, over years, that evolved into the anal sex situation.
Amendola told us today that if the information is accurate, it will help Sandusky's case. He says confirming everything his client has been saying all along. Betty, back to you.
All right, Anna Werner, thank you. Coming up on tonight's CBS Evening News, how to try terror suspects. Congress has a new idea, and the White House does not like it. Pakistan confirmed today that the U.S. has left Shamsi Air Base in southwestern Pakistan. It had served as a base for unmanned drones. Pakistan ordered the CIA out by today in retaliation for U.S. and NATO airstrikes that killed 24 Pakistani soldiers last month. The White House is opposing a Senate bill that would require foreign terror suspects captured overseas and here in the U.S. to be prosecuted in military, not civilian courts. The controversial bill is working its way through Congress. 10 years after 9/11, the debate still rages. Homeland Security correspondent Bob Orr explains.
After underwear bomber Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib was caught trying to blow up a passenger jet over Detroit, the FBI questioned him for 50 minutes, then read him his Miranda rights. Abdul-Muttalib quickly stopped talking. Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte wonders how much intelligence may have been lost.
When a terrorist hears you have the right to remain silent, that's inconsistent with what we need to do to get the most information out of them to protect American lives.
Ayotte, a former prosecutor, supports the Senate bill requiring that all foreign terrorism suspects like Abdul-Muttalib be detained by the military, not by law enforcement, even if they're caught inside the United States.
You're not entitled to a lawyer.
Supporters argue al-Qaeda suspects should be handled as war prisoners inside the military system, held indefinitely like those detainees at Guantanamo Bay. But Colorado Democratic Senator Mark Udall, who opposes the bill, says civilian courts have a proven track record with some 300 terrorist-related convictions since 9/11.
Of those 300 people who've been prosecuted successfully, all of them have very long sentences. Many of them have life sentences.
One of those, Najibullah Zazi, an al-Qaeda operative from Afghanistan who planned to attack New York subways with backpack bombs.
I have nothing to do with al-Qaeda.
After months of surveillance, the FBI arrested Zazi. Had the Senate bill been law, Zazi would have been handed over to the military. The proposed law would allow the administration to exercise a so-called waiver and keep a suspect like Zazi in the civilian system. But opponents say that process could hamper investigations.
The system we have is working. Let's not fix it if it's not broken.
Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta and FBI Director Robert Mueller agree. In blistering letters to Capitol Hill, Panetta warned the bill imposes a restraint on the flexibility to pursue our counterterrorism efforts. Mueller added it will inhibit our ability to convince arrestees to cooperate.
Congress, just like it did when it denied funding for the transfer of Guantanamo detainees to the United States, is sending yet another message that they don't have faith in the administration's ability to deal with the detainee issue writ large.
The administration is accusing Congress of political micromanagement at the expense of national security, vowing the president will veto the bill if it reaches his desk. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
Well, online shopping sales this holiday season started out strong, and it appears they have stayed that way. The research firm Comscore said tonight that sales up until the week ending on Friday hit almost $25 billion. That is an increase of 15% over last year. In other news, though, one analyst said it is unbelievable how bad it is. He's talking about the Hollywood box office. The total take this weekend was $77 million. That is the smallest amount in more than 3 years. Revenues for the year are down 4% from 2010. Australian Stephen King is one lucky surfer. King was riding the waves north of Sydney today when a shark jumped out of the water, biting his leg and taking a big chunk out of his board. King's wound was minor, and he calls himself the luckiest guy on two legs. Still ahead, female prisoners in China with just hours to live. The chilling photos are next. A series of 8-year-old photographs is currently making the rounds on the internet in China. As Celia Hatton tells us, despite their age, the death row images are shedding new light on a country that executes far more people than any other country in the world.
These photos shocked many across China. Women in their final 12 hours on death row. Taken in China's central Wuhan province in 2003, few saw these images until now, as they spread across China's internet, showing convicted drug traffickers preparing for death.
It's incredibly rare to see inside any of China's prisons, let alone personal photos from death row. China's thought to sentence more people to death than any other country, but the actual number of executions carried out every year is considered a state secret.
This prisoner receives a new outfit and carefully folds it to wear for her execution. The women are fed fresh fruit, dumplings, and a special treat, hot pies from McDonald's. This 25-year-old convict laughs often, but eventually sings to heaven, asking for a second chance. Another woman stays in her cell, dictating one last letter. When dawn breaks, it's time to wear those final outfits. Tears flow. Outside tallies estimate China carries out around 4,000 death sentences annually for crimes ranging from government corruption to rape. In comparison, 46 people were executed in the U.S. last year. The Wuhan photos are fueling online debates that it's usually the poorest and weakest people in China who face the harshest legal punishments.
If you're executing thousands of people every year, and in a very densely populated country with deep familial and kinship ties, you're executing that many people every year, you are generating a lot of discontent, a lot of unhappiness.
For these women, the debate comes too late. The photos end as they join a line of prisoners to face the firing squad. Celia Hatton, CBS News, Beijing.
Former strongman Manuel Noriega arrived back in Panama tonight from Paris. He'll go straight to prison for murders committed during his rule in the 1980s. Noriega, who at one time worked closely with the CIA, has spent more than 20 years in prison in the U.S. and France for drug trafficking and money laundering. The Global Climate Conference wrapped up today in Durban, South Africa, with an agreement to extend the binding carbon emission targets of the Kyoto Protocol for another 5 years. Neither the United States nor China, the two largest carbon polluters, are bound by those targets. According to the UN Weather Agency, the three most powerful greenhouse gases reached record levels last year. Up next, craft brewers creating new jobs along with beer. Finally tonight, although long considered recession-proof, beer sales overall have been down in the current slump. Yet at the same time, sales of craft beers from small independent brewers are up 21% in the past 3 years. Elaine Quijano paid a visit to a pair of brewery brothers.
Like millions of beer drinkers in America, John Trogner and his younger brother Chris discovered in college they really enjoyed beer.
Not just drinking the beer, but what's behind the beer, the history in the beer, where these flavors came from, and where we thought we could take them.
So they started their own brewery in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They played it safe, making beers based on business plans. But safe didn't sell.
We were about 5 years into it. We was almost like, if we're gonna go down, let's have fun doing it. So we started just doing beers that we really loved. We weren't thinking about what would sell well, and we started having fun.
That saved them. Their customers loved the new beers, and by 2008, they'd reached a tipping point.
We couldn't make more beer, but we had the orders coming in.
So at the height of the recession, Trogs decided to expand. They hired sales reps and have watched their market grow since. Now they're moving their award-winning brewery into a plant 3 times larger.
We're definitely nervous. I mean, we have a lot of sleepless nights. Today is a special day where we're trying to get our first batch through the new brew house. So, we're tweaking everything as fast as we can to make sure things go well.
The expansion means growing from about 50 to 70 employees. Already, Trogs has found a formula that's eluded other businesses: how to grow jobs in a recession. According to industry figures, they and their fellow craft brewers are responsible for employing 100,000 people. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS, 60 Minutes and an exclusive interview with President Obama. I'm betting win. CBS News in New York. Scott Pelley will be here tomorrow. Good night, everyone.